Orwell. I quoted it often in my work, where he describes the typical attitude of academic radical leftists. The text was written in 1937. Quote, "We all rail against class distinctions, but very few people seriously want to abolish them. Here you come upon the important fact that every revolutionary opinion draws part of its strength from a secret conviction that nothing can really be changed." End of quote. Orwell's point is that many radicals invoke the need for revolutionary change as a kind of superstitious token that should achieve the exact opposite, prevent the change from really taking place. Again, like today's academic leftists who criticize capitalist cultural imperialism, but are in reality horrified at the idea that his or her field of study would really break down. And as I mentioned in Venice a week ago, I think that big biennales like Venedig Biennale are a model of this. Did you notice how all these big biennale, I don't know, Kassel, Venedig, their ideology is more and more the ideological presentation of biennales, that of radical leftist self-criticism. We are all penetrated by capital. We know we are just a tool for capitalist investment. We should criticize ourselves. But you know the famous quote from your greatest compatriot here, Sigmund Freud. He quotes that famous Jewish jokes of two Jews used to lie to each other, so that the way to really lie is to tell the truth, because you are expected to lie, and the other. So one Jew says to the other, "Why are you telling me that you are going to Lvov when you are really going to Lvov? I know." So again, my answer to that self-critical attitude is, why are you saying that you are just an instrument in the reproduction of cultural capital when you are really just an instrument in the reproduction of cultural capital? So, how then to break this circle? It is only when we despair and don't know anymore what to do that change can be enacted. We have to go through some kind of 0 point of hopelessness. The lesson of the 20th century communism is that we have to gather the strength to fully assume this hopelessness. Giorgio Agamben said in an interview that thought, das Denken, is the courage of hopelessness, an insight, again, which is especially pertinent for our historical moment when even the most pessimist diagnostics, as a rule, finishes with an uplifting hint at some version of the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. The true courage is not to imagine an alternative, but to accept the consequences of the fact that there is today no clearly discernible alternative. The dream of an alternative is a clear sign of theoretical cowardice. It functions as a fetish which prevents us from thinking to the end, the deadlock of our predicament. In short, the true courage is to admit that the light at the end of the tunnel is most likely the headlight of another train approaching us from the opposite direction. This train, approaching us from the opposite direction, assumed lately many forms. In the last year or so, troubles in our global capitalist paradise exploded at 4 levels. The renewed so-called fundamentalist terrorist threat, our declaration of war against ISIS, Boko Haram, and so on, geopolitical tensions between and within non-European new powers, China, especially Russia, the flow of refugees crossing the wall that separates us from them, and so on and so on. And I would like to begin with this. problem which now appears to be temporarily resolved, but which I think will explode again, the so-called, I even don't like the name, problem of refugees. My God, I was often accused of playing some kind of a racist, Eurocentrist game here, like some journal leftist author even accused me of that I'm already waiting in line to join Pegida or whatever. No, on the contrary, I think we should change the field radically. We should move away from this humanitarian approach. Of course, we should do what we can, all we can, to help the refugees. But the problem is not a humanitarian one. It's ridiculous to claim that if we Europeans open up our heart again, then what? All the poor people will come here, and what? Isn't it much more crucial to begin thinking now? It's not an improper moment now, and acting in view of this thinking about, but what caused the refugees? What are we, Europe also, doing wrong? Our economic neocolonialism, buying the best fertile land in Africa, the crazy geopolitics of the big powers. Are we aware that without American, Russian, Saudi Arabia and so on intervention, there would have been no refugees from Syria, from Iraq and so on and so on? We have to change these coordinates. I think that precisely this fascination with refugee suffering is the ultimate fetish, because it changes a mega serious political problem into a humanitarian concern. And sentimental liberals always like this. To change again, to avoid critical political analysis and begin to talk, all this rubbish, like, are our hearts open enough? No, we don't need open hearts. We need precise political action to break this cycle of global geopolitics, which is natural in the sense of eternity. They are always redefined by a specific historical context. We can say, but I already find this problematic, that people, refugees, who are covered by these rights, who are reduced to speaking bodies, are proletarians in the sense of being deprived of citizenship. But I find this fashionable designation problematic. Now comes the polemical aspect. Some of my friends claim refugees are the new proletariat. I find this attitude extremely cynical and mystifying. Why? One of my friends, I will not embarrass him and name him, even developed this theory. We in Europe have good revolutionary critical theory. But, and this is the problem of Marxism from the beginning, but we don't have a revolutionary subject who will do this. So now we have a unique chance to outsource, as it were, the revolutionary subject. Maybe the refugees will be our proletariat. It doesn't work. It's too optimistic, this. Not because, let me emphasize immediately, refugees are too stupid or whatever. But for Marx, proletariat means something very precise. Workers who generate wealth, but are deprived of the substance of their being, exploited, and so on and so on. The irony is that, as far as I can see, most, or if not most, at least many, among the refugees would precisely like to become proletarians in this sense. The irony is that, and this is what complicates everything, the irony is that the traditional working class, let's say you're a traditional workers, you are okay, alienated in the Marxist sense, blah, blah, but you have a permanent job where you are permanently exploited and so on, but you survive and so on. This is almost a privileged position today. We have permanently unemployed, we have refugees, we have precarious workers and so on, who, I'm tempted to say, strive all the time to become good old-fashioned exploited proletarians in this sense. You know, that's the problem with Marxism today. It is, in a way, Marxist analysis of capitalism. It is more true than ever. The Marxist description of the capitalist dynamics, the famous lines in Communist Manifesto and so on, they reach today a level that Marx couldn't even have imagined. You know, when Marx says everything solid melts and incredible dynamics, all natural relations dissolve. Could he even have imagined, for example, the consequences at the level of sexuality with transgenderism and so on and so on? So it's more radical than Marx imagined, but at the same time, and that's the nice Hegelian lesson, precisely when some concept is fully realized, directly seems to describe reality, a gap appears. The victory is the moment of defeat. So if I try to describe in the best possible way where Marx stands today, I'm tempted to quote one of my favorite Rabinovich Radio Erevan jokes from ex-Soviet Union. You know, Radio Erevan was legendary. There is a real Radio Erevan, but I'm talking about legend. A radio station to which listeners were allowed to call it to ask questions, and the answer of Radio Erevan was always, in principle, yes, it's true, but. So one of these famous questions to Radio Erevan is it true that the Jew Rabinovich, this is the legendary figure of Soviet jokes, that the Jew Rabinovich won a new car at a state lottery? Radio Erevan answers, yes, in principle it's true, but it wasn't a new car, but an old bicycle, and he didn't win it, it was stolen from him. So it was something similar that we have to say concerning, is it true that proletarians are today a threat to existing system, blah, blah, blah. Yes, in principle it's true, but the true proletarians are not proletarians at all, and so on and so on. Now I want to do another complication here, which I also think Marx didn't take fully into account. What, and many of my friends hate even the very term, ways of life. That's the big problem with refugees. Not their problem, our problem. In no way do I blame them or even held them for inferior. Listen, we are not only citizens or humans in this abstract sense. All of us, at least initially, belongs to a certain community with a specific way of life. And of course, the problem with refugees and our problem is that again, refugees don't come as Cartesian subjects. Hi, I am just a speaking body and nothing more. No, they come with the burden of a specific way of life. How to combine these specific ways of life is a problem. Why? And again, I know I'm here treading dangerous waters, because for some of my leftist friends, the very term of way of life is, are you joining Le Pen or Pegida or what? Except if we speak about marginal way of life, you know. So what I'm saying is that my first correction of the standard view, a way of life is not just what we call about civilization, customs, and so on, but a civilization, customs, which, if you permit me here, a reference to theories of Jacques Lacan, psychoanalytic theories which signal how you deal with what Lacan calls jouissance, excessive enjoyment, which doesn't mean kind of a half-traumatic, like sexual madness enjoyment, but it means not direct pleasure, but the enjoyment, maybe I can put it in this way, the enjoyment of organizing pleasure. For example, what is a way of life of a certain community? Typically, this is very evil what I will say. When I debate with my multiculturalist friends, they said each group that comes to Europe should be allowed to maintain their way of life. Okay, no problem. But then I asked them, okay, what do you mean by way of life? And then they start to enumerate their food, their dances, their songs, blah, blah, whatever you want. But all of them, as far as I knew, then stop at a certain level. They never add their sexual customs and their relations of hierarchy. But they're at the very core of a way of life. I remember from my own miserable country, south from here, there was, I've written often about it, there was a big conflict, big, not too big, nobody really cared, but okay, polemics in Slovenia, some 15, 20 years ago, I think. Roma, old-fashioned wrong term, gypsy, a Roma girl escaped her home because her father, when she was 12, in an arranged marriage, wanted to force her to marry a colleague of him. And he took refuge with the police, and what to do then? Of course, all the feminists exploded. We should protect the girls' rights, and so on and so on. I noticed with real vicious spirit that the same feminists otherwise were all against Eurocentrism, for the protection of different ways of life, multiculturalism. But then one key figure of Slovene Roma community said something which was deeply true. He said, but wait a minute, arranged marriages are the key component of our way of life. You take this away from us, in 2-3 generations, the latest, we will become, you know, the usual gypsies. Maybe we will have our spicy food, our music, and so on. We will disappear. So where do you stop here? And I'm not, to avoid a misunderstanding, in no way am I claiming, yes, they are barbarian, we should impose of them our way of life. I'm just, or another aspect, hierarchy, social hierarchy. For example, in India, caste system, I'm sorry to tell you this, is their way of life. And consequent post-colonial theorists there accept it. For example, when I was in India, I asked them, what are you doing to abolish castes? And they said, who are you to preach us to this? Western Democrat, racist, neocolonialist, culturalist, who wants to ruin our traditional way of life. Again, in a way, they were right. You know, this is, I think, an impossible dream, that you think you can bring together what we in Europe, and I'm not saying we are right, I'm just describing, that we in Europe have certain fights for, you know, gay struggle, abortion, femininity, human rights, and so on. And the problem is no longer just theoretical, and at the same time we want to be tolerant, and so on. Where does tolerance end? And I claim there is no simple solution here. Multiculturalists like to say we should be all one big family, tolerant towards each other, and so on and so on. I am opposed to this formula, but to avoid a misunderstanding. Not because I think our universality is the right one, and we can impose our universality onto others. I see a totally different way out. As I immediately discovered in India, there is no neutral way of life. What those, and this is typical, although they present themselves as leftist, what Indian post-colonial cultural studies people present as their way of life has an extremely strong class dimension. And there is a wide resistance in India, which is totally obfuscated by this topic of some way of life, cultural identity. You know that there is, for example, the Naxalite, a Maoist rebellion, almost 1 million armed men fighting in what remains of the jungle. You don't read about this. What about, I encountered them, I immediately established contact in India, the so-called untouchables, and the lowest among them, those who are cleaning dry toilets. They provide to me the best definition of what is a proletarian. I asked them, what is your program? They told me our program is not to be ourselves, what we are. They totally rejected all this, you know, we are poor, but isn't it something wonderful in our way of life, in how we are? No, they don't want that. And I think that, you see, that should be our first starting point. All these communities of refugees and so on, don't buy the talk of a unique, homogeneous way of life. In the same sense as our societies are deeply divided by antagonisms, the visible and the less invisible antagonism. For example, so-called culture wars and so on. The same goes there, with very interesting paradoxes that some authentic anti-Eurocentrists don't like. For example, I discovered, and I was given text which analyzed this, that in India, I'm totally for the predomination of English language. You know why? I discovered, isn't it a paradoxical nice result, that the lower you go in social ladder in India, the more they like English. You know why? Because as untouchables explained to me, their own languages are so much penetrated by social hierarchies. Like, if you are a member of different caste, you will use different expressions or how you address others, that for them, English, with its simplistic university, it's the language of equality and openness. And again, we have to accept this paradox. I have it at home. One of these theorists of the untouchables wrote appraisal of English language as the only means to bring social and so on. So here, this is my first point. It is not that we have ways of life and then we should tolerate each other, and this is the usual stupid formula. In an open society, each of us, each community can develop its way of life. But when one community oppresses the other, of course, the other society, the oppressed, can turn into fundamentalism, is thwarted, and so on. No, almost, I'm tempted to say the opposite. There are no authentic ways of life. Or ways of life are traversed, cut with radical antagonisms. What is Indian way of life? It's one great struggle, and so on. It's the same with China. The regime tries to propose some kind of Confucian way of life, specifically Chinese. No, it's a cover-up for almost permanent civil war in India, and so on. So again, we should be very open here and never talk about another's way of life. When I come to a society, I never ask, what's your way of life in a foreign country? I ask them, what are your fights? And try to orient. So for me, universalism is not a brotherhood of ways of life. I respect you, you respect me. No, universalism is, we have a struggle here, emancipation, workers' rights, feminists, and so on. They have their struggles. Can we bring these struggles together? Now comes my paradoxical result. Here I praise, but in a very sad, almost cynical way, here I praise the wisdom of British imperialism. For example, Indian way of life is embodied, this traditional caste system, in one of the most horrible books that I ever read, The Laws of Manu. It's a basically systematic description of the caste system. in all these tiny daily material practices. And an obscene old guy like me, I love it, you know. Because, for example, you have there, oh my God, how I love it, descriptions like, if you don't want during sexual act for a man who cares about women in that book, to make her pregnant, and after you pull in the last minute out the penis, in what way should you turn around and in a correct way wipe your penis or whatever and so on? It's madness, it's the madness. But what I want to say is this. Then I spoke with some Indians, good friends of mine, and then I checked it up with others, it's true. They gave me a wonderful explanation. They said, do you know that before British colonization in 17th century, this caste system was already disintegrating, but it got a great boost from the British occupation, because the British got it immediately. If they tried to impose their way of life, they would be breeding revolutionary proletariat, social chaos, what capitalism brings. So literally, these laws of Magus were rediscovered, printed by the British and so on, because they got it that if the silent Indian majority is in the hands of the worst hierarchic patriarchy, it will make their rule much easier. So, you know, this is already a nice example of how it's not, as some post-colonial theorists try to convince us, there are some harmonious, okay, maybe with conflicts, but well-doing, living in natural balance, holistic, you know, all that bullshit. We imperialists just come to a mountain and mine it. No, the authentic way is to ask the spirits of a mountain, can we rape you? And only then you do it, and so on. No, the point is that it's not like this. It's that paradoxically, authentic imperialism always was, in this sense, multicultural. Especially today, I claim. Are you aware what is happening now, the significance of the last political events? How? Precisely those countries who stand economically for the most radical, open global capitalism, culturally move more and more towards some kind of authoritarian ethnic stance. China. I find no contradiction in the fact that on the one hand China insists on its Confucian legacy, not just Western culture. At the same time, as a very shrewd, I think, reaction to Trump's stupidities, you saw what Xi, the Chinese president, said a week ago or so. He presented himself and China as the true agent of global open market against protectionism and so on. The same with Erdogan in Turkey, the same in India with Modi and so on, and so on, and so on. So again, we are encountering here real problems. That's all I'm saying. Let me mention, I learned it from a Tibetan friend, this. A wonderful, terrifying example from Tibet. I'm totally horrified by what the Chinese are doing there. I'm just asking you one thing. Don't paint Tibet as some kind of holistic, harmonious society which was then brutally destabilized by the Chinese intervention in 49 and especially later in 59. Look, I read this again. I was told by a friend, and then I checked it up in a book which is totally pro-Tibetan. You know that in ancient Tibet, and this lasted till 59, when the Chinese intervened directly, because till 59, for the first 10 years of occupation, the Chinese basically left the way of life as it was there. You know, Tibet is mountains, just narrow path. So if two persons walking in the opposite direction meet on a path, one has to step aside. And it was strictly codified. Those who is lowest, let's say an ordinary guy meets a high priest or a feudal master, he has not only to step aside, but do a certain gesture, which is so disgusting, humiliating. Bow his head, but at the same time make a specific expression with his face, like look with eyes as an idiot up, and like basically you see what a disgusting idiot I am. And it's so nice, I like this, always being devil's advocate. When in the late 50s Chinese wanted to prohibit this, of course, what was the outcry? Oh, imperialists, you are meddling in our way of life, and so on and so on. Now, Chinese were extremely brutal, I agree, but the situation was more complex. You know, when Red Guards in the mid-60s were thousands of them ruining monasteries in Tibet and so on, it's nice to ask one simple question. Who were these Red Guardists? The rumor was Chinese brought them by trains, by planes, and so on, hordes of wild... No. Now we know the data. You know how many Red Guardists came from China to Tibet? Between 50 and 100. All those thousands of people were their own dissatisfied young people. So again, what I'm saying is that it's a wrong opposition, specific way of life, versus bad universal imperialism. Yes, the universality of imperialist culture is often oppressive, one-sided. But don't play particular culture as the good thing to resist universality. I think that the point is to show how our European universality is a false universality and through shared struggle impose another universality. Another thing I want to make clear here, that, I'm sorry, here psychoanalysis comes useful. Why is it so traumatic for people to really integrate into a society? You know, these endless debates, why some refugees don't want to be integrated. I just think that it's good to include also this element of enjoyment in the sense of regulating sexual mores and so on and so on. This is what really a way of life is. Not some abstract cultural values, but how you make love, how you laugh, how you treat authorities, and so on and so on. And that's the core of a way of life. So when I said some ways of life are incompatible, I was accused of being a Western racist and so on and so on. No, I just claim that this is a real problem in the sense that it's, what's my main point? Not we should impose some standards on others. No, we should be here very open to dialogue and so on and so on. But my thesis, to put it in very abstract, even Hegelian terms, my thesis is that universality is not something above particular ways of life, in the sense that we have each our own way of life, but we are all universal. We love, but each of us loves in a different way, and so on. No, universality is something that corrodes from within every way of life. For example, fighting for universality does not mean impose our universality on others, and the same goes for ourselves. But fighting for the universality which is part of our own way of life as the critical energy which fights all that is particular reactionary in it. For example, for me, gay rights, abortion, and so on, it's universality fight in our culture. Women's rights and so on struggles, insofar as they emerge in Arab countries, are their own fight for universality. And here, it's very interesting point of how I learned from my Palestinian friends. Even Israeli government, IDF, the occupation of the West Bank, plays the same game as the British. They still have among Palestinians so-called honor killings. And the Israeli occupiers practically, whenever possible, ignore them, don't intervene, because they got the British lesson that it's much better to dominate the West Bank, to have these traditional Palestinians with their honor killings and so on and so on. So what we should connect to on the West Bank is those, and they exist. I know them, wonderful rapper singers and so on, people, cultural groups, women, who are at the same time opposing Israeli occupation of the West Bank and their own traditional culture, claiming that they are ultimately on the same side, rejecting this idea that simple recourse to one's traditional identity is enough to resist universal capitalism or whatever. Because, you know, the way we organize our enjoyment, it's a very ambiguous one. Let me give you an example. Sorry for this brief detour, but I love it. Are you watching, now it's very popular, okay, now I do something for which I can be arrested. If you don't have it yet on your TV, go to Pirate Bay. You get it immediately. This new TV series based on Margaret Atwood's classical novel, Handmaid's Tale. I watched this series. It's not ever the full first year, but nonetheless, I watched it with pleasure. But then I caught myself enjoying it very much. And I was horrified. Why? Because then I asked my friends, and the same suspicion was confirmed. I asked them, why do you like this series? Their official excuse was because it depicts the danger of this Christian fundamentalist society where women are not allowed even to read and blah, blah, blah. But then I dug a little bit deeper and discovered that it's not as simple as that. What we enjoy, we find a strange, perverted pleasure to enjoy this universe, how women are controlled, all the details, how this works, and so on and so on. There is a strange pleasure with it. Or to give you another example, which is even crazier, of this link between pleasure and guilt. I was shocked to read recently a report on a legal case in Mexico, and the title of this report, as it was reported in The Guardian, says it all. Quote, Mexican man cleared in sexual assault of schoolgirl because he didn't enjoy it. And then I emailed my Mexican friends and got the story. It's a wonderful one, wonderful in a terrifying sense. A group of 3 rich young men raped a young girl. One of them, the wealthiest, of course, from a family, was pardoned. Why? There was no debate about facts. It was all clear. But the guy, his defense was not, I didn't do that. He admitted that he, sorry to be tasteless in details, that we played with squeeze the girl's breasts, he penetrated her vagina with fingers, all that. But his defense was that he acted without carnal intent. He didn't sexually enjoy it. And the judge claimed this makes him innocent. Because if he didn't enjoy it, it was not a sexual assault. Of course, feminists explode that. But what was this judge thinking? My first idea was, I'm sorry if it appears problematic, but I mean it in a totally honest way, I'm totally against any rape. But if I were to have to choose a guy who rapes a girl in some kind of a blind passion, and a guy who does it, not even enjoying it, just in a cold way, sorry, but for me, the second thing is nonetheless minimally worse. Because, fuck it, why did he do it if he didn't enjoy it? Obviously, out of pure brutality, to humiliate her, he didn't even have the excuse of, I couldn't resist my passion or whatever. Obviously, the silent premise of the judge was, experiencing pleasure as such makes us guilty. With quite a logical conclusion, if you didn't experience pleasure, you are not guilty. And I think this is maybe part of our Christian legacy, and it goes even further. The first step is pleasure is guilty, but as every good psychoanalyst knows, you must bring this to the end. Not only pleasure makes us guilty, but without guilt there is no pleasure. And isn't this maybe, I simplified, the basic premise of Protestantism? You know, like as we say, that was a common saying when I was young. In Catholicism and in Protestantism, you can do whatever you want. Just in Catholicism, if you confess it at the end of the week, it's okay. In Protestantism, if you feel guilty while you are doing it, it's okay. And you know, this is what I wanted to make clear with enjoyment. Yes, pleasure is pleasure, but guilt transforms simple pleasure to enjoyment. You take away guilt, pleasure is just a stupid physiological pleasure. And I'm so sad I don't have time here to go deeply into this crucial opposition between pleasure and enjoyment. Enjoyment would be pleasure generated by all the detours and so on in our approach to pleasure. Like, sex is not just, I see you, I jump on you, or whatever. Sex are all the detours of seduction and so on and so on. There is no direct sex. Let me quote you an anecdote from my friend, the British Lacanian Daryan leader. I used it in just one of my books, so it's safe to repeat it here, which I love it. He is a practicing analyst, and he told me he had a patient who reported to him one, slip of tongue, Fehlleistung, or what. He take a lady with whom he was flirting to a restaurant which was in the basement of a hotel. Of course, his dirty plan was a good dinner and then, oh, I'm tired, why don't we go up for a room, and so on. But you know what happened? When he entered the restaurant, instead of saying, a table for two, please, he said, a room for two, a bed for two, please. Now, here you see that Daryan leader is a good psychoanalyst. His reading was not the obvious one, which is, of course, he was already thinking at sex. No, it was the opposite one. He was afraid that he will enjoy too much the for pleasure, eating, and that this will make him forget why is he truly here, to sleep with the... So it was kind of a ethical reminder. Don't get too much caught into eating. Remember, your true duty is up there later, and so on. You know, this is why he was afraid in this sense of his enjoyment. Or another example, wonderful, of enjoyment, another friend informed me about it, who is now in the United States, now that they have still a crisis. The friend of mine in the evening so he went into one of these big Walmart megastores and noticed something very mysterious. Close to the exit of the store, there were many, those carts where you put what you want to buy, but still full there, full of stuff abandoned. And he asked a guy working for Walmart, what does this mean? And he told him something very tragic, almost beautiful. Impoverished middle classes who had this ordinary ritual of going to shop now cannot afford it. So they came there just to do the ritual. They walk around, put stuff in and so on, and they leave it there, they go. It's a wonderful example how they get enjoyment without pleasure. I don't have time to show you another example which is the purest for me, and it's terrifying. I hope you saw it, not to be terrorized, not to enjoy it. Joseph Goebbels' Totaler Krieg speech. Took it, you find it in 10 versions at YouTube and so on. And you know what's so surprising? He doesn't promise pleasure, it's just more suffering. Like Goebbels said in almost Kantian terms, Do you want a war which will be so total that you cannot even imagine how total it will be? Do you want to suffer so much more that you cannot even imagine how much you will suffer? And this is really, in a terrifying sense, a great speech. Because there is no promise at the end, but at the end you will... No, he just promises more suffering. This is enjoyment jouissance at its purest without pleasure. So, okay, now let me check it up, because... Okay. What I will do is this. If you allow me to go a little bit over, I wanted, before coming to the conclusion, to do another detour through Apocalypse, since we already, how we, and here, I wanted also to refer to my good friend Robert Faller, who is here, how this dimension of enjoyment beyond pleasure is, as a rule, embodied, enacted in all those blind, superfluous rituals and so on that accompany our acts of, as Robert Farrell developed this in detail in one of the most wonderful institutions that I imagine. This is the title of one of his books, Belief with No Believer, with No Bearer. You know, this was always for me the basic miracle of social life. How there are beliefs which can function socially without anyone believing in the first person. Like, allow me to repeat, I hope you don't know it, another wonderful story that really happened in my country in the 70s, ex-Yugoslavia. There was enough toilet paper in the stores. But a rumor started to circulate that there will be a shortage of toilet paper. So now comes the beauty. What happened? People, in contrast to what we usually assume, did not distrust powers. They accepted it that there is enough toilet paper. But they reasoned in this way. But what if there are some idiots who really think that there is not enough toilet paper? So, to make it sure that they have it, they will start to buy it like crazy, and there really will not be enough toilet paper. To prevent that, it's good for me now to go and buy a lot of toilet paper. So you see the point. Nobody believed that there really is not enough toilet paper. It's enough to presuppose that there is another one who believes in it, and at the end, the result is the same. I will not bore you here with the standard stories that I like to repeat of these beliefs of Santa Claus, you know, like, ask parents, do you believe in Santa Claus? They say, of course not, I'm not an idiot, I buy the presents. You ask children, do you believe in Santa Claus? Of course not, so why do you act as if, well, not to offend my parents and to get, you know, like, there are numerous examples of this belief which functions socially, beliefs, without anyone in the first person believing in them. And we can go even a step further. Now, because I know that Robert doesn't quite like Hegel, I will make a Hegelian twist on his theory and introduce here bestimmte Negation. I will quote a joke, probably you know it, but I like to repeat it. One of the best jokes in Ninochka, Ernst Lubitsch's film. You know, a guy comes to a cafeteria and says, can I get coffee without cream, please? You know what's the answer? You must know he gets. Sorry, we don't have cream, so I cannot really give you coffee without cream. But we have milk, so I can give you coffee without milk. You know, this is what Hegel meant with bestimmte Negation. You know that although it's materially the same coffee without, it's not the same coffee, it's without milk or without cream. And from my youth, those were paradise times, not really. Communism, I remember we had exactly the same joke. When something was missing, for example, that was the joke, socialist joke. You enter a store and ask, do you already have or do you still not have, let's say, toilet paper? And you know what was the classic answer? Sorry, you are in the wrong store. we are the store which doesn't have oil. The store which doesn't have toilet paper, it's the one across the street and so on. So, but now you will think it's just a cheap joke. No, I don't have time to go it, and I hope, Robert, that for this, what we'll add now, I will be a little bit pardoned, not totally liquidated for Hegelian deviation, that I think that ideology mostly lies in this way today. It's not like it brings you coffee without milk, and it claims that it brings you coffee without cream, how should I put it? You know what I mean? It's the implied negation which is a false one. How does this work? How does ideology function today? Well, I tried to develop it when I wrote a text, not the one in Independent, but the one that I didn't get published. Nobody wants to publish it. This is too crazy. About the French elections. I still think they are the lowest point of our so-called democracy. Why? Okay, we had Le Pen, we know what she is. Proto-fascist, whatever you want. Although I don't like this term proto-fascist or fascist. Not that she is any better. The problem is that, don't you think that leftists are often quite lazy? They see something they don't like, and instead of thinking what is specifically new here, you simply apply the old term, fascism. You miss the point, I think. But okay, we have Le Pen, we know what she is, danger. Then, who is Macron? He is, it's clear, establishment at its purest. And when I just expressed some doubts in Macron, I was immediately accused of being a slave of fascism, of supporting fascism, and so on and so on. So, do you see the absurd situation? How? Okay, I will repeat, you remember the Radio Erevan joke. Let's ask Radio Erevan. Is it true that in France, Emmanuel Macron, independent outsider, united on all the people in a great anti-fascist struggle and so on? Again, in principle it's true, but A, he is not an outsider, but the very inside, and B, he embodies the very politics which produced Marine Le Pen. He stands for what gives space to phenomena like Le Pen. So, as a guy who hates me very much, he attacked me ferociously, a biographer of Michel Foucault, Didier Eribon. But he provided here a wonderful, he said, the choice is this one. If you vote for Marine Le Pen now, you vote for Marine Le Pen. If you vote for Macron, a vote for Macron is a vote for Marine Le Pen 4 years from now, in the future. That's all I meant, not that I am for Marine Le Pen, but this tragic closure, how, so here, what does this tell of ideology today? Alain Badiou at some point put it in a wonderful way when he wrote that the main function of ideological censorship today is not to crush actual resistance. Repressive apparatuses do that, but to crush hope. To immediately denounce every critical project as opening a path at the end of which there is something like Gulag. So I think that that's the crucial thing that happened in France. You know, we had Marine Le Pen for what she is, and we had establishment at its purest. No actual alternative. And the paradox being, if you wanted to move more to the left, you were proclaimed an instrument of the right. That's what centrist liberals like to do today. They claim there is no longer a difference between left and right, just between liberal openness, which means global capitalism the way we have it today, and right-wing populism. So I think that one of the great prospects, this makes me really sad, for Europe, is that this standard politics will go on the way it is, which brought us into trouble. Just every 4 years, we will be mobilized to vote for this politics in order to prevent the fascist danger, you know. And then, if you will move to the left, they will say, no, objectively you serve fascism, and so on and so on. So we are in a very sad situation. I had another long part, but one has to, you know, at least from what I said now, you know why people call me Fidel, not because of politics, but, you know, comrades, 5 minutes and then 5 hours, no? So I'm a little bit too long, I admit it. But now, if you ask me a more fundamental question, what can we do? What ethical attitude is the proper one today? When I say courage of hopelessness, I, of course, don't mean it we should just despair. I'm just saying that courage of hopelessness means not renounce hope, but get rid of the false solutions. Recognize a false solution which appears as a solution, but it's really a train moving towards you. That's the only way to really invent something new. Now I will do something quite surprising for some of you. I will show you a clip. Have patience, some 5-7 minutes of a film, which I really like. It's from this new Danish noir series about a detective called Karl Mørk. He designates himself as a terminally depressed detective. And this is, towards the end, what you will see of the film. Original title is Flaskenpost. Message in a bottle, but the title was very nicely changed in English, A Conspiracy of Fate. Just so that you see the situation. Not yet. Wait for half a minute after. The situation is that in a small hut close to the coast in the sea, there are 4 people. There is this detective, terminally depressed detective, broken chain there. And then there is the serial murderer called Johannes. He holds enchained Mørk, inspector, as prisoner, and 2 kidnapped children, a boy and a girl. And Johannes is a pathological killer who presents himself as one of Devil's son, whose task is to destroy faith. And he says to Mørk, and now I will take away your faith. And I just, if it will work, should I maybe put this away? I don't know, so that you will see more. Let us, please, now you can do it. Show this clip. Wait a minute. If you take it away, then I will take it this away. Thank you. We are here, yes. Please put voice.
Du skal ikke tenke på henne nå. Nå er det deg og meg. Vet du hva jeg er?
Du har gjort det her før.
Nå tar vi en ting om gangen. Nå svarer du først på mitt spørsmål. Vet du hva jeg er?
Nei.
Jeg er djevelens sønn. Og jeg vet godt hvordan det høres ut.
Nei,
Jeg vet godt hvordan det høres ut. Jeg tror ikke at jeg er djevelens eneste utvalgte sønn. For det er jeg ikke. Jeg er en av hans sønner, en av mange sønner. Vi er hans soldater, kan man si.
Djævelens. Satans. Så det er derfor, du gør det her?
Han kom til meg når jeg trengte han aller mest.
Killed his mother.
Så gjorde han meg sterk når jeg var svak. Og så ble jeg hans. Siden da.
Og så slog du børn ihjel. For at få dem til ham. Får hun deres sjæl i helvede eller hvad?
Dette har ingenting med barn å gjøre. Jeg forstår at det kan virke sånn, men det har det ikke. Jeg har funnet den reneste måten å tjene hans endelige mål. Ferdig med det. Vi skal vinne over Gud. Jeg tar troen fra de som tror. Først fra et av barna, fra foreldrene, familien. Alle mister sin tro, og så sprer det seg. Og nå... Og nå... Nå skal jeg ta troen fra deg også.
Du spiller din tid. Jeg tror ikke på Gud. Jeg tror ikke på en skid. Johannes. Johannes. Johannes, hør her. Nej, Jørg. Nej. Nu vil jeg sige. Nu vil jeg sige. Tag mig i stedet for. Tag mig i stedet for. Johannes, tag mig i stedet for. Samuel.
Du har brukt hele livet ditt på å redde mennesker du aldri har møtt. Selvfølgelig tror du.
Samuel.
Jeg har aldri møtt noe menneske i hele mitt liv som tror så mye som deg.
Johannes. Johannes. Det er bare en lille dreng. Han har ikke gjort noe.
Ja. Ja, han er jo bare en liten gutt. Så hvorfor er det ingen som hjelper han?
Tag mig i stedet for. Johannes, tag mig i stedet for. Johannes! Samuel, sig på mig. Samuel! Nej. Johannes. Johannes! Johannes! Tag mig!
Skulle du ønske at Gud fylte deg med en sånn kraft at du kunne stoppe meg? Jeg tror at du kommer til å huske denne dagen, Karl.
Fång mig. Hør mig.
At du var her. Og at det ikke forandret noe. Og Gud kom aldri.
Johannes, hør. Johannes. Hør, du skal ikke gøre det her. Tag mig i stedet.
Nå tar du denne.
Johannes.
Så tar du hevn. Så blir du hans, så blir du fri. Stikker du meg? Stikk meg, så blir du fri. Ja, nå skal jeg følge meg. Nå har du sett. Nå skal du leve.
Okay, stop, please. Stop.
Assad, få den maskine ned. Find Karl og børnene.
Okay, perfect. I think that if there is, again, an ethical position which embodies what I try to render with my idea of courage of hopelessness, this is it. The beauty of this scene is, for me, not just that you see also a man who doesn't believe can be good. No, I'm more crazy. It's a radical atheist ethics, in the sense of what I call atheist Christianity. In order to be really radical good or believer, but in this materialist sense, you have to survive the fact that there is no God, no guarantee, and so on. You have to go through this 0 point. Of course, it would be easy to read this scene in a cheap religious point and said, but it's not true that God is not here, but God was here 2 times. When he wanted the detective, the press, to sacrifice himself, and when the girl who is the sister of the drowned boy didn't want to take revenge. But my point again is what only very intelligent theologists, even some Protestants and so on, know, that ethics, again, not only is independent of belief in the sense of we can all be good. No, to be truly good, you have not to believe. In this sense of believing in any higher authority that controls you, directs you, provides general guarantee. That's so difficult to accept for us. The 20th century Marxism was, I think, still part of this transcendent, almost religious ethics. You know, like history is on our side. We act with accordance of history. We get direction from history. Today, we have to act alone in this sense. There is no higher sense. There is no higher authority that will guarantee, provide meaning to our acts. There is no meaning traditional Marxism. You know that the most disgusting metaphor I can imagine for religion, the so-called big painting metaphor, that we, limited humans, are like idiots staring at a picture, which means reality, too close, and you see just stains. If you step back, you see that what appeared to you stains contributes to the harmony of the entire picture. In my reading, Atheist of Christianity, this is what dies on the cross. This idea of God as someone who, when you are in deep shit, you can say, but don't worry, there is a higher authority which provides guarantee. Well, tell this to Gulag prisoners or to Jews in Auschwitz. Don't worry, your pain, your suffering here is just a stain. Step back and you will see how it contributes to the harmony of the universe. The proper Christian ethics is much more paradoxical. Is no, your unique suffering here, insignificant as it may appear from the abstract standpoint of some cosmic perspective, this is what absolutely matters, this absolute engagement. This paradox, to put it in theological terms, although we are obviously a small piece of dust in a small planet, as they say, on the outskirts of our universe, but nonetheless, in some existential sense, of course, not literally, but existentially, when you are in a difficult ethical predicament, your only experience is the whole world was created so that, for me, you know, everything will be decided. the fate of the universe in this fight here and now. And that's how I even read the radical notion of love. It's not love in this Buddhist love, you know, all the universe, all the living beings. No, love is unique. That person, and I don't care if all the world disintegrates. That's why true love for me is not simply love for this or those reasons. When you truly love someone, if you are asked, why do you love him, her? The only answer is, because I cannot do it without. It's impossible, simply, to step out, to leave behind. Love is not this cosmic Buddhist, all-embracing perspective. Love is a link to an absolute singularity. It's a total imbalance in the universe. So that would be, if you ask me, my existential perspective, the only hope given to us today. You have to be radically atheist. We are approaching deep shit, it's clear, at multiple levels. Ecological crisis, biogenetics, just name it. And I'm to provoke you, Peter. I can do it because, only a leader will be able to ask questions. You will not be able to ask me. I even think that Protestant predestination means this. It is predestination in the sense of our fate is decided. But the secret premise of Protestantism is not, okay, if our fate is decided, so, sorry to be vulgar, let's sit down, get drunk, drugs, and watch pornography. Who cares? No, you have to fight all the time. You know why? Because we are predestined, but we never can know what is our destiny. And that's, for me, paradoxically, the highest freedom. The highest freedom is to guess, which, of course, it means select, create your eternal destiny. No matter how limited we are in our practical choices, we can always choose our destiny, as it were. To put it in philosophical terms, and that's how we should react to today's crisis. We have a destiny. We are predestined. If things go the way they go, in 50 years, either it will be a total ecological social catastrophe, or, in the best case, as Hollywood teaches us wisely, it will be in films like Hunger Games and so on, it will be a new class society, those who are in, those who are out of the cupola. It will be worse than the old class society. This is our destiny. And the thing to do is to radically change the entire frame, to change destiny itself, to change the entire perspective. That's why I think we should reject that simple strategy, What are the realistic options? Let's diminish pollution a little bit, all this idea, if temperature raised for 2 degrees, it's still good. If for 2.5, it's bad. These are totally imaginary numbers, I claim. That's superstition. No, we have, as they say, to change more radically our own way of life. Now you will say, I'm dreaming. Listen, maybe I'm dreaming, but I'm not alone. Even intelligent conservatives know this. Read, please, the one who certainly is not a leftist Marxist, Peter Sloterdijk. In his book, Was geschah in 20. Jahrhunderts, he paints very clearly this picture of unbridled capitalism and the nation-state logic of the highest ethics as sacrificing for your state brings catastrophe. A radical change is needed, and so on and so on. Everybody knows it, my God. Capitalism is changing into something new, we don't know what. And the horror, why we are like the detective Merck, is that, again, we cannot any longer rely on any safe Marxist teleology. But progress or the digitalization, we will become whatever the stupidities are, singularity or a new brain, and so on and so on. It's an open situation. We don't know where we are going. This is the wisdom of true revolutionaries. Robespierre and Saint-Just knew this exactly. Their metaphor was not, we revolutionaries are developing some higher necessity. The most beautiful metaphor of Saint-Just was, a revolutionary is like a navigator on a ship in the middle of a storm without a compass, and so on. And even Lenin, at the end of his life, in some tragic moments, he wrote, "We don't know at all what is happening," and so on. That's the only hope. I'm sorry if I was too long. That's nature. And I'm very, extremely grateful for your patience. I know, I hope for a new renaissance of Vienna, to flatter you at the end, but I mean it seriously. You know that a little bit over 100 years ago, your city was, as they say in Star Wars, the center of the known universe. Name it, science, music, Schoenberg, all of them. I mean, Freud, you were it. You were it. And you know why? Adorno, precisely because you were not at the center of technological inventions and so on and so on. There was space for this, and I just hope that you will become that again. I'm sure that the official big cities, Paris, London, New York, they are lost. It's changed with cities like yours here. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for that. Stop. Let me repeat my old joke. Don't waste your energy now. When we take over, in different official conferences, you will be forced to applaud, you know. Keep your energy for our dictatorship later. Okay. Now, jetzt Genosse Stalin wird ein kleines Resümee mit kritischen Bemerkungen geben.
Slavoj, thank you very much for
No, I'm grateful to you, seriously.
Always interesting lecture and to be with us. I have here 2 pages of questions, and I tried to...
I hope you wrote the questions before knowing what I will talk about, in a Stalinist way.
To be honest, I choose the questions after during the lecture, and there was one interesting question fitting in the context of the film.
Sorry, question that you also got from listeners.
From listeners, yes, yeah, but before the lecture sent by email. And this question, it's really true. It was, how did you sleep yesterday? I mean, I know you love the detective stories, and we saw the film, so maybe it fits to the film.
What is the point of this question? I don't mean it in a naive way, but if you put it the way you put it, it would be like as if yesterday I raped 5 children and now how was I able to sleep? No, I must tell you this, the same as you. As a heavy diabetic, whatever problems I have, there are no problems with sleep. I sleep more than well. The only problem, and I can confirm this, the truth of Freud's interpretation. Sorry. I rather go to this, yes, okay. Of Freud's reading of that famous Vater, siehst du nicht, dass ich verbrenne. You know, we don't just escape from traumatic situation into sleep and then dreams. What regularly happens, and it happens to me all the time, is that, okay, there is something unpleasant going on, you escape, you dream, but then the big question that Freud asks, a very naive question, is, why do you awaken in the dream? His answer is implicit, you sleep. But he uses this example. You know, we have so-called dreams which quickly incorporate an external disturbance so that you can continue to sleep, like the classic stupid things. It happened to me often, happens. Something is disturbing your sleep, let's say phone ringing. What you do is you quickly construct a dream in which a phone is ringing so that you gain time. Now the big question is, but why do you then awaken? The standard primitive answer is that simply the external intrusion gets too strong. Like you can, to be vulgar, go on sleeping. If I just say something, you can, but if I start to beat you, there will be a limit, no? But Freud's answer is the opposite one. You escape from external disturbance into a dream. But what you then encounter in a dream can be the trauma of your life. So you, in a dialectical sense, you awaken to be able to continue the dream, which is the dream of your daily life. Let's say you did something horrible, you want to forget it. And you dream, but you awaken when in the dream you confront that trauma. So it's a beautiful idea, which is, I think, a correct one, not in this metaphysical, romantic sense, our life is just a dream, but that our everyday reality is structured not as a dream, but as a repression, Verleugnung, whatever, of something traumatic. So that will be my answer. I have no problem falling asleep. But unfortunately, I quite often awaken the problem is awakening. I awaken in nightmares, confronting different traumas, and so on and so on. So that would be the answer to that question.
So the second question, interesting question, but not so far away from your theories, is do you think politics and comedy has something in common?
Yes, but on one condition. My God, I didn't pay you for these questions because they are so, till now, so easy and nice that, you know what's crucial, if you permit me a brief improvisation here. The crucial thing is to learn, and I often develop this point, that comedy is not only the easy thing. When things get really horrible, then they are too horrible to do a tragedy out of them. The only thing you can do is a comedy. The idea came to me, I'm sorry if you know some of you, this line of thought of mine. I approached the question, why is it that all good films about Holocaust are comedies? Because again, it's too horrible to, for example, let's imagine that you were to do a heroic tragedy. A Nazi torturer approaching a Jew, and a Jew says heroically, you can kill me but not break my spirit, opens his shirt or whatever. It underestimates the horror of concentration camp or a definitive. You know, you are so broken down that for an external view at least, it's a comedy. You know where also came this idea to me? Did you see, no, did you read, I hope you did, Primo Levi, Si questo è un uomo, This is a man. And I discovered that some of the most horrifying scenes that he depicts are objectively comical scenes. Like, you know, when you had once a month or every 2 months in Auschwitz, so-called selekcja in Polish, selection. All inmates had to run quickly in front of an SS doctor, just half a second, and he just put you into one of the two lists, to be burned or to... And how it was a whole comedy to do it. The prisoners exchanged advices, how the point was to appear healthy. No? So how to pinch your skin to appear more lively red, how to, even if you are that tired and exhausted, that you appear strong. It's a comedy. But it's even the worst of Auschwitz, the so-called Musulmaner, the Muslims, the living dead. The way they acted was like comic dolls, and it's not a comedy where you laugh, it's comedy at its most terrifying. I wonder if you would agree. I'm sorry if I already developed at some of my other talks here this point. You saw the movie to which I'm opposed, although it fits my description of concentration camp comedy, Benigni, La vita è bella. I think the movie cheats because first, it's not comical enough. At the very end, when father sacrifices himself for the son and mocks as if they take me away, but he knows he will die, and when the son at the very end describes this, to his, I don't know who, at that point you are supposed even to cry probably, I don't know. I think, that's why I'm telling you this. Where does the film cheat? How to make a truly desperate film? You know the story, I will be very brief. Father and son are captured in Italy as Jews sent to Auschwitz. There, father, in order to spare the son of the horror, tells to the son a story with a different spin. He said, we can leave whenever we want. This is just one big competition for a prize. If you stay here, if you don't escape, then at the end we will get some big prize, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the tragedy is that allegedly the son doesn't suspect the truth, and father in this way saves the son from too big a trauma. But imagine there would have been a way to make a movie much more horrible along the lines of the story that I said about Santa Claus. What if just before he is taken away to be shot, the father, Benigni himself, were to learn that his son, he pretended to his son, this is just a comedy. His son knew the truth all the time, and he also pretended to believe his father, just not to make it too harsh for his father, and so on. That would have been what I would have called in Kierkegaard's term infinite resignation, and so on. I think that the other horrible film with, how is it called? Pasqualino Sette Bellezze. Maybe you know it. It's another desperate, I think it's Liliana Cavani or Lina Wertmüller, Holocaust comedy, is much better because at the end, when laughter stops, you don't get some sublime moment of crying, you just get total despair, and so on, you know. Sorry. As they say, you know, when I was young, we were still reading, now it's forgotten, Karl May Winnetou, and then the chief said at the end, Hauk, ich habe gesprochen. So, ich habe gesprochen. So,
okay. Die letzte Frage, the last question, what do you think about Austrian politics at the moment?
It's very difficult for me to talk about Austrian politics without laughing, but not for the reasons that you think. No, you are wrong. You know that the name of your foreign minister, who will now even maybe be your prime minister, Kurz. In my Slovene language, this is an extremely vulgar term for penis. Much worse than Schwanz and so on. So when they say Kurz is coming to Ljubljana, everybody dies laughing, you know. And I think that in a way, even now that Kurz will visit Slovenia, the titles in Slovene was Kurz is looking at you. And this sounds, because it's a Kurz te gleda. When I'm tired of you, I say Kurz te gleda, like let the prick look at you, which means fuck off, you know. No, but I'm saying that although he's supposed to be intelligent, nice, well, maybe ultimately he is ein einfaches Kurz in Slovenisch, you know. That he could have done much more precisely taking into account the unique Austrian position, even Kreisky, I think. As much as I don't like these jouisseur decadent types, but wasn't Bruno Kreisky, okay, he was Chancellor, but nonetheless, actually, he was much more, I think, intelligent in playing, in knowing how to nonetheless play an international role with this unique, neither here nor there, Austrian position. Like your position enables you to do more, I claim. Your unique geopolitical position. But listen, if this is all you have, why don't we break all the rules of it's prohibited? I know it's horrible for old fascists like us. And allow at least symbolically one question from there.
That's a good idea.
One, so that then we can say, but the public also debated and so on, you know. Because I feel bad. Even the better thing would be to, this is deepest anti-feminist manipulation, to have a lady ask the question so that we can say, but no, ladies were also, you know. Sorry, do you agree? Did
That's
I
a good
say
idea.
something too much? Like, at least one question, if you want to, because I really, all the jokes that I made, but like, maybe we shouldn't totally dominate the people. Does any of you, sorry, you are. Sie können die Frage auch auf Deutsch stellen, wenn Sie wollen.
I start with English.
Okay.
You say the problem in France is that after 4 maybe Le Pen.
Because the causes which will, yeah.
In German we say, es ist besser ein Ende mit Schrecken als ein Schrecken ohne Ende. In diesem Sinne wäre es nicht besser, man hätte wie in den Vereinigten Staaten gleich Le Pen gewählt oder Trump, das ist geschehen, nicht? Und wir haben jetzt den Schrecken, aber das Ende.
I know what you are saying, and when I said, although I was misunderstood, that I prefer Trump, I was attacked for the same reason. My thing would you know what I hoped? No, in France I didn't support Le Pen because I think she is more dangerous with all the openly fascist tradition than Trump. But listen, I think still basically I was right. My logic was this one. First, and we can see it clearly now, no, Trump is a confused guy, he is not a fascist and so on. He's evil, dangerous. My point was this one about Trump. Only a kind of a shock, which hopefully will not be too dangerous, can awaken the American left. I hoped for a more dynamic faced with the trauma of Trump's victory in the Democratic Party. Unfortunately, it's horror what is now happening, and as some of my leftist friends like Colin West said, it's not the problem of the United States now, it's not even primarily Trump, it's the catastrophic reaction to him of Democratic Party. They were first horrified, Trump, the end of the world. Now Democratic Party is radically renormalizing Trump. Nancy Pelosi said recently, don't be afraid, Trump is like Reagan or Bush, after 4 or 8 years will be back, and the Democratic Party establishment is now using all its energy, not to really fight Trump, but to throw out the Bernie Sanders danger. So I still, it's not an a priori statement. I'm not this old-fashioned crazy Marxist like communists in Germany, 33, besser Hitler, the lines would be clear. It's a very strategic statement. I'm just afraid, as I said, that we are entering a new cycle. Isn't this a very sad prospect? But what you said, I deeply appreciate that logic, because do you remember, I think I found a wonderful example, even with my limited knowledge of German. I remember some 20 years ago, was it, when against Kohl, the candidate was Hans-Jochen Vogel. And I know enough of vulgar German that I know verkohlt means verbrennt with coal, no? And vervögelt means we know what. And one of the leftist motto was a nice lady saying, besser vervögelt als verkohlt, you know. I like it, I'm sorry. But what I'm saying no, I'm not so crazy. I'm well aware of dangers. I'm desperate. I know all the risks. And again, in France, Le Pen is not innocent. We are witnessing entering now a terrible new era, not so much France, not even new Austria, but some of post-communist East European countries, my own Croatia, Hungary, up to a point Poland, Baltic countries. A new narrative is emerging, which is terrifying, which is not only rehabilitation, denial, whatever, of Holocaust, but the idea is this one. To cut a long story short, Holocaust was organized by Jews. How and why? Jews wanted to dominate Europe, to ruin Christianity, and in a cold calculation, they knew that Germany is the only hard moment defending Europe. French are degenerate and British are in their island, so Germany has to be broken. They consciously provoked Hitler to do the Holocaust, so that now Germany is just in this regressive mood, non-aggressive, accepting refugees. Now come with the second point. The claim is there is no Arab-Israeli conflict, it's just a mask to blind us. The Arab invasion, refugees of Europe, is a Jewish plot to ruin Europe. Why I'm telling you this? Not to shock you, but for one reason. Isn't this sad? And Trump is part of the same movement. This regression, decadence of public speech. Such rumors were circulating all the time. But till 5 years ago, maybe 10, they were a private obscenity. You talk like this if you're crazy with your friends at a Gaststätte or where. Now they more and more penetrate the public speech. I think this is a catastrophe. So that's how the title of the book is meant, not the final countdown, will we be swallowed by refugees? No. I think we should be more proud, but in the right way as Europeans. European legacy of enlightenment and so on, it's a great legacy. The true threat to it are not refugees, our own defenders of Europe are the true threat to it. Imagine Europe when Le Pen is a president in France and so on. That would no longer have been Europe. Whatever maybe, if there is still worth fighting for in Europe. But again, to calm you down, I'm not totally crazy in just engaging in provocations. I'm just deeply afraid. If just this type of conflicts will get repeated, Macron, Le Pen, then at certain point, Le Pen will win. We have to change the field. That's my only point.
Thank you, Slavoj, very much.
Ich danke Ihnen. Danke. And as I like to say in my provocative style, using very problematic terms, wir sollen immer einsatzbereit sein in unser Kampf für Freiheit. I like to use the term einsatzbereit in a different way. Thank you very much. I was proud to be here.
Yeah, you need to get for the book signing. Gibt jetzt die Möglichkeit, noch Bücher unterschrieben zu bekommen von Slavoj Žižek?
Ja.
Genau.